Well, welcome back to the America First Energy podcast. I'm your host, Skyler Zunk, and today Ben and I are going to dive into several of the different conversations we recently had at the annual Virginia Solar Summit here in Richmond, Virginia. Over the past 5 years or so, this summit has been bringing together folks from across the energy industry, from across state and local government. Even some federal leaders from Washington, D.C. came down to talk about the fastest growing sector of energy here in the Commonwealth and in most other states across the country, being solar. We had phenomenal conversations with Virginia's first solar panel manufacturing company, Solarix, who's getting set up in Bedford County, Virginia. We also talked with Mr. Charles Skelly from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, who talks about the workforce development and the advocacy he's doing for the jobs and the electricians that are taking part in a lot of these different projects. And we also talked with Mr. Dan French, who is the summit organizer, who's been at this for the past 5 years, bringing together a vast array of opinions, voices, and leaders from across the industry. Each year, this keeps getting better. Ben, who else are we chatting with today?
So we'll also have the chance to talk with a longtime partner of Energy Right, Jess Gray, who is the CEO of Gray's Lambscaping. One of the highlights from, probably the main highlight from the summit this year, was the conversation about agrivoltaics. How can we balance agriculture and solar development? And Jess has got a frontline perspective and view on that as one of the leading solar grazers here in the Commonwealth. So really excited to get into these conversations today. And after we chat with a couple of these different stakeholders, we'll move into our In the News segment. But let's get started with our conversations with Jess Gray. Hey, everyone. This is Ben Wilson with the America First Energy Podcast here at the Virginia Solar Summit with Jess Gray, the CEO of Gray's Lambscaping. Really excited to have you here, Jess. So, Jess, for our audience, you're involved in sheep grazing on solar farms. So for those that may be unfamiliar with the industry of solar or sheep grazing, tell us a little bit about what you do and your role in Virginia.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. Instead of just using mowers, we use our sheep to graze the vegetation on solar. So a lot of people don't realize that if we aren't using sheep, it just gets mowed.
Right.
Because you can't have the grass up in the panels or the equipment or anything like that. So what we do is we bring our sheep in to maintain it instead, and then we get a lot of other benefits to it, like the soil health. But we're also, if you have healthy vegetation underneath, you keep cooler panels, they can absorb more energy. So it's a win-win-win situation. So that's what our girls are doing on the daily.
Right. Awesome. So sometimes people have this misconception that, it's only a couple of sheep here and there. So tell us give us a sense of the scale, right? How many acres are you doing this on? How many maybe projects, or how many head of sheep do you run typically?
Yeah. So currently we have about 1,100 sheep grazing on. Our portfolio will open up a little bit more. So we have 1,100 sheep right now.
Right.
By midsummer, we will be on about 4,000 acres.
Wow.
And it's various stages of this is in construction, this was recently completed, or this has been done for 5 years. All of them require a different amount of sheep and a different way to approach them. But that's kind of, when we tell people our numbers, they think it's low. Stocking rates fluctuate with weather and things like that, but that's what we're working with.
Right, but it's a growing industry and really trying to find way. I mean, of course, you guys are a leader here in Virginia. We've got other solar grazers as well, which kind of leads me to my next question. I want to talk about the American Solar Grazing Association, which you're a board member of, which is really exciting to see more coordination and networking in the industry to try to grow it, talk about it a little bit more. One of the main goals, as I understand it, of ASGA is to figure out ways to share this message of how good and productive solar grazing can be, but not only for existing farmers, but future farmers. So talk to us a little bit about how you see solar grazing playing a role in the future of farming for people who maybe grew up in a farming family or new farmers.
Yeah, so I think American Solar Grazing Association, it's first and foremost, it's for farmers, run by farmers. I mean, it is all about the farming mentality, right? We're not led by outside organizations or anything like that. It's all for farmers helping farmers, which is really, really important. Education is our biggest goal. We're trying to get people to understand the value that it brings, how it's going to help you. And the way that we're doing that with younger farmers is saying, hey, you're not going to have to wait for your grandparents to pass away for you to inherit land. Now you have this opportunity at this land. You can grow your flock. And then the side part of that is, maybe you don't even really like sheep. Maybe that's not your thing. But you can now take that income stream and buy cattle or whatever else it is you want to do and invest in a farm somewhere else.
Right.
So we're trying to educate everybody on it's really an opportunity business.
Right.
And ASGA has led the way in that research and bringing people along and making those connections. One of the other ways we're trying to do that right now is we're trying to figure out how do we connect these companies with grazers.
Right.
what needs to happen in this, and making sure that they're comfortable as well as the grazers are comfortable. And we're trying to figure out and network that mentality. So, hey, you're in Virginia and you're in this area of Virginia. Look, we've got these 3 grazers. They're all ASGA certified. They've been, involved and everything like that. Here's an ASGA contract. Let's get that rolling for agrivoltaics.
Right. And the more we can network and connect developers, owners of projects with, these farmers, the better projects will be, the more involved communities can be in these projects, which means more success overall.
Absolutely. I think that there's this really amazing ripple effect that's gonna start happening with solar. So whether people like it or not, solar is having such a positive impact outside of it, right? Like, we're seeing sheep economy come up. We're seeing more vets. We're seeing in our area where solar is going in, we're seeing older houses being fixed up. That's solar money fixing somebody's house. We're seeing influx in the fire department. Now they got the things that they need. So there's all of this really great community stuff coming out of solar that I think a lot of people don't see right off.
Right.
But it's going to happen.
Right. Well, Jess, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We're excited about being here at the Virginia Solar Summit and looking forward to more conversations throughout the week.
Well, Ben, that was great to hear your conversation with Jess Gray of Gray's Lambscaping. Jess and her husband, Marcus, are phenomenal leaders in the agriculture and energy space here in Virginia. I've had the chance to tour their home farm down in Pittsylvania County, and we've gotten to go on several sites where they have sheep grazing actively, including the Crystal Hill Solar Facility down in Halifax County. They do a great job, and they do a great job educating communities about what they're doing. I mean, folks will sometimes drive by and see sheep on a site and not really know what they're doing, but she did a great job explaining that, and we're so grateful that Jess and Marcus call Virginia home, and as they get onto even more solar sites across the Commonwealth. Up next, we're going to highlight a conversation with the conference organizer, Mr. Dan French, who's been at this for quite a while, has quite the history and career so far in energy. And we're very grateful for all that he's done to highlight these important topics here in Virginia. Hey, everybody, it's Skyler with the America First Energy Podcast, here with another quick interview from the Virginia Solar Summit. I'm thrilled to be joined here by the executive producer of the Virginia Solar Summit, going on several iterations here in Virginia. Welcome back. We're so glad you're here. Mr. Dan French, you want to share a little bit more about your background?
Thank you, Skyler. Thanks for being here and the work you're doing. Yeah, Dan French, executive producer, Virginia Solar Summit, recovering attorney, ancient family roots in Virginia, Purple State, Bellwether State, and the epicenter of the planetary energy renaissance, I'd like to say. We're leading in so many ways on nuclear, on innovation for a long time now. Offshore wind, we've been leading, and now solar, doing things in different ways. This actually began as a brownfields to brightfields event many years ago. Brownfields always 99-0 in the Senate. Everyone kind of agrees on pollution, and you just couldn't do anything else with a mine or brownfield. And I was not a solar guy. I didn't really care about solar. I was in oil and gas. I was in-house at BP as a young attorney. But when I saw someone put solar panels on a landfill that I did care about, it clicked for me. And now it's the tremendous progress in Virginia starting there. And now we're pushing this week all in on agrivoltaics, not just eliminating those brownfield negatives on the landscape, but maybe taking some of our best land, making it better, making it do different things, diversifying farmland revenue, and making it work, I think, for communities in a new and different way. That's taken a long time to kind of build up to, but maybe that's the opportunity for this moment, especially because the big news, I think at the show this year, we now have Virginia homegrown panels, Solarix. They're going to be going to production in the fourth quarter of this year. And we want to build at home. We want to bootstrap if we can from the ground up. And Solarix is going to help us do that.
So I want to get to our Virginia manufacturer panels here shortly. But Dan, what iteration of the Solar Summit is this? Is this year 5?
No, I think our first one was in 2018. So pre-VCEA.
Okay.
And we really started small potatoes. I was running around the country doing some of this brownfield market making. It's, degree of difficulty is very high and specialty capital gets very risky. And it was really hard if you had a mined land. Where do you find that real capable brightfield redeveloper? There weren't very many back then. And so the first time out, we did speed dating. We let landowners come for free. If you had a brownfield, raise your hand. We were mixing them every 7 or 8 minutes. It was awkward and weird, but the people power, the social connection, we need to shake hands with some of these people so we can do business.
So outside of that brownfields to brightfields conversation, you've been engaged in the clean energy industry, and before that with BP. You've gotten to see a lot of this industry growth. How would you characterize some of the ways, specifically the clean energy solar industry has evolved, changed in the past 5-10 years?
A lot more technology, the innovation, the cost has come down, the efficiency has gone up, and it really has become the lowest cost of energy, and also the fastest that we can put up really fast and bring those electrons on the grid. And now we've all these, been plenty of failures, in Virginia and elsewhere. 400 years of real estate development in America, and we boom and we bust and we learn and we fix the mistakes and all that progress. And I think Virginia has led the way. We've figured out, and Dominion Energy is led on this. Solar can do more.
Yeah.
Dual use, community benefits. We've got the tsunami of investment. In some rural counties, it's been 100 years. The trains came through. That was the last major investment. And solar pays where it lays.
Yeah.
We need baseload power. We did a fusion session, fission and fusion. But
and you guys were apt to highlight the nuclear energy advancements that Virginia's made. What was the impetus to having that panel here this week?
Well, we're going to need it all, I think.
Sure.
And we're not a regular solar trade show, as you know. We're always been focused on the substance and nonpartisan. And I see that really bright future. Jetsons, Star Trek. We're going to need big baseload power.
Yeah.
There's this bigger shift, not to get too esoteric, but molecules to electrons. So I'm an industrial guy, and even the big factories, they want to use more and more electrons. And if we can just harvest the electrons that are coming on site, it pencils.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot of factories want to consume electrons that are produced within its own community or within its own state. You mentioned on an earlier panel, Virginia is unique in that it imports more energy per capita than any other state in the nation, now exceeding California. This is becoming somewhat of an energy emergency. We're going to have some hard decisions if we can't figure out how to bring more energy online. How do you think solar and agrivoltaics plays into that by creating more power in putting into the system in a lot of Virginia's rural corners?
Well, I think President Trump is right to declare a national energy emergency. The price is going up, and I'm pro fracking. It's been great. Where it's given us the lowest industrial electricity rates in the whole world, but now we're exporting. That's a good story. We want to export cheap American energy to the world, but that, of course, supply and demand means our natural gas story. And Virginia is also importing most of the natural gas that we are burning, and so we're kind of doubly dependent in a certain kind of way. So we are leading the world on the demand side, the data centers. We are the beating heart of the digital world. We really are. And we would do well to produce as much of our own power as we can, whether you're a farmer or the whole state. The electrons are falling freely on our land every day. We can capture them and use them, or we can pay someone else to send them to us.
Yeah.
But the price seems to be going up.
No, where do we capture that benefit? Do we capture that economic benefit of having energy generation locally, or do we pay for West Virginia or Pennsylvania to power homes and businesses? Dan, if there was one thing that you could, one bit of knowledge, one opinion of yours that you could leave with a policymaker, say in Richmond or in Washington, D.C., some aspect that they really aren't grasping about clean energy and the energy renaissance we're seeing in the country, what's that one piece of wisdom that you'd leave with a policymaker, who's tasked with making decisions on energy policy?
That we can make solar do more. To industry, I would say slow down a little bit, but let's think holistically about our communities. Let's engage them. Let's ask them, because especially our rural communities, we've been waiting for the rains to come. If it's not this, it could be something else, but we're going to be waiting. But if we just engage, if we maybe agrivoltaics can help solve some of our on-farm problems. My favorite study, the vineyards in France this fall, the Chardonnay grapes were plus 60% yield under the panels, and the frost loss, they had a bad frost. The control plot got wiped out by half.
Wow.
So under the panels, the power of the microclimates under the panels, to me as a farm kid, almost as valuable as the electrons.
Sure.
And so I would say, if you've thought solar is a dirty word, energy inflation is dirtier. Those maybe cancel out. And we kind of started out by talking about the technology, the capability of the people at this conference and elsewhere. It's such now. Forget solar. Let's do all these other things. It really is this multifunctional platform, especially the agrivoltaics and the ecovoltaics. I think in 10 more years, it's all gonna be kind of farm and ag first, and we'll just be making the solar work for the vineyards and the shepherds and all these other things.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dan. We appreciate it. You guys
appreciate your work.
Learn more about the Virginia Solar Summit online, as well as the the agrivoltaic summit, the solar farm summit. that you
Solar Farm
hosted.
Summit, and we're honored actually to have been invited by the US EPA to the National Brownfields Training Conference. It's going to be one big land use renaissance on Chicago's Lakeshore at McCormick Place this August. Again, there is this concentric circle of bipartisanship, nonpartisanship, where we all agree if it's pure value add, if we can eliminate or solve problems while we make money, I mean, that's America, that's capitalism, and we can do that.
I love it. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you,
for being with
Skyler.
us.
Absolutely.
Skyler, that was a great conversation with Dan French. Really awesome to hear his enthusiasm for the solar industry, really talking about that tsunami of investment, desire for private industry to really commit to communities. And one thing that I take away from that conversation that I hope our audience will really lend an ear to is the idea that solar can do more. Solar is not just an energy generation source, but it's can be a partner in our communities, can be a partner to farmers, can be a partner to our local public services. You know, this is an opportunity for us to have widespread investment in our communities when done right and responsibly. And one of the main things that Dan was super excited about and he talked about in his interview there is Virginia's now welcoming our first solar panel manufacturer in Solarix. So our next conversation, we will talk with Carlos Class of Solarix.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's Skyler with the America First Energy podcast here, joined by Carlos Class of Solarix, a new solar panel manufacturing facility that's going to be sited right here in Virginia in Bedford County. Carlos, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Skyler, thank you so much. My name is Carlos Class. I'm the CEO of Solarix. We are a disabled veteran-owned business, women-owned business, African-American-owned business, minority-owned business, all of the above, just like our energy policy of all of the above. We have a very diverse collective senior management team. It has a well-versed of experience and knowledge, not only in the module manufacturing side of the house, but also in the cell manufacturing side of the house. From our Chief Operating Officer to our CTO, they've all been parts of the development of the heterojunction cell technology, of new module manufacturing practices as well across the world. So for us, it's an honor to bring this to not only to Bedford County, but to the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're so close to DC that I think a lot of people must be very proud that we are following right through with the current policies, where we're bringing American companies, American management teams to produce American-made solar energy.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key critical components of this manufacturing site, it makes it a little bit different, is that 100% of what we produce is recyclable, including our first 1 gigawatt automated recycling line at our facility as well.
It's incredible. We're excited to see the facility take shape. As I've explained to you, and as you have probably seen, sometimes a common critique of solar development in Virginia and America is, where are these panels coming from? Is it really energy security if we're relying on foreign nations to import their solar panel technology? We've been fierce cheerleaders for every investment of onshoring for solar manufacturing, and are happy to be cheerleaders for Solarix's effort as well. This is going to be phenomenal. How did you settle on Virginia specifically?
Yeah, great question. So in terms of Virginia, we were looking at 6 other states. It took us about a year and a half to do full site selection. Being a project from the ground up, you have to really mitigate the investment, the construction risk with your investment committee as well, right? And so we were looking for ready sites, and we found a lot of distribution centers. And for some reason, we came across this pharmaceutical facility, which is a tier 1 pharmaceutical facility that basically abandoned for the last 2.5 years. Almost 890 employees were working full time in this facility. So it left a huge vacuum and a huge gap within the community within Bedford County. When we walked into this facility, it was phenomenal. It was beautiful, from laboratories to research development sites to an already established manufacturing site. So we respected the architecture and the infrastructure of the facility. It actually streamlined our go-to-market timeline as well. And it also mitigated the entire construction risk. So it gives us an opportunity to go into a facility that is what we call a turnkey aspect,
Sure.
right? That's one. And the second one, and the most important, is the support from the local Economic Chamber of Commerce. Big shout out to Pam Armstrong, Economic Development Director, Megan Lucas from the Chamber of Commerce as well, and especially the people from Lynchburg and Bedford County and those from Liberty University. The most important aspect of this is that we have access to phenomenal talent and very skilled workforce that it really shook us. It put Bedford in the map for us right away, and we decided to make this decision and commit to the state of Virginia.
Well, excellent. Well, welcome to Virginia. We certainly have the workforce to meet your needs in this manufacturing endeavor. Absolutely. Tell us, so Virginia's got about 4 to 5 gigawatts of solar installed right now. We've got 12 to 13 gigawatts of solar permitted so far in the Commonwealth. How many gigs of panels are you all aiming to produce per year out of this facility in Bedford?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And you are right. I mean, just one company alone has a 16 gigawatt mandate here in the state of Virginia. There's other ones that we've talked with an additional 10 gigawatts of production that they're going to need in the next 10 years, plus the capacity that you mentioned, including storage, of course. We want to make sure that most projects that we support include an aspect of storage. So our first year of manufacturing capacity, we're 1.2 gigawatts, with the second year expanding to 2.4 gigawatts of production. And we also have a phase two aspect of this project, which will be the full domestic vertical integration, producing cells domestically. As you know, that is a significant investment and one that requires a very, very significant amount of infrastructure from the water to the wastewater treatment and so on. But the most important part of it is the labor, right? Going from 1.2 to 2.4 gigawatts, we're looking at increasing our labor capacity. And then for a cell manufacturing line, that we triple that labor capacity as well. So we 1.2, 2.4, and then the vertical integration.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, you could see a story where Virginia can meet its solar energy development growth with panels produced within Virginia. I think that's going to be a phenomenal story to highlight, with probably hundreds of local jobs that folks can point to. These panels are produced 3 counties away, 4 counties away. That's going to be a great story showing that circularity of the.
You know what's beautiful about this is that we're not creating jobs, we're creating careers. That's number one. And number two is that our panels are recyclable as well, but they're made by the Virginians, right? So when you go to a lot of these other counties and places that are not familiar or not too comfortable with solar panels because of where they came from, I think it paints a very different picture. When not only are you getting a Rolls Royce of a panel at the price of a Chevy, quoting my good old Randy Snow, my CFO, when you all have a panel that is made in Virginia, that is the highest quality that we can produce, highest level of certifications. It's made by veterans. It's made by Americans. And this is a project whose management team, you can actually pronounce our names. It is a very different approach. And also, it's a team that it's led by a veteran that's been there, done that. I carry the flag on my shoulder, and it will continue to serve my country. And this is a different way of serving and giving back to the community.
Absolutely. It's a very noble endeavor. This is going to be a phenomenal opportunity in Virginia. But as you may know, about a third of Virginia counties have said no solar whatsoever. We are not going to consider any projects. We have moratoriums, we have bans in place, we have policies that totally discourage development. If you could speak to a county leader who might be in one of those counties that are closed for solar, what would you tell them now that they have this option to deploy Virginia-made panels in their Virginia locality?
Well, no, the first concern was the panels coming from China. We take that out of the equation. So now let's go down the line, right? As a leader from your community, what are your concerns, right? And that's one of the things that we've met with a couple counties and some leaders from these counties as well as a delegation, senators and delegates at the state of Virginia, who were very, I'm not going to support solar at all. And now, we are on a first name basis. Why? Because it oftentimes, and I want to go back a little bit to your question, it's a matter of education, right? If you explain what solar energy does, the purpose, and what we are bridging and enabling the effects it has in the farmers in terms of 20-30% yield increases in their crops, for greenhouses as well, where they don't have to rely on PFAS or PVC plastics to cover their greenhouses anymore. When we talk about energy savings as well, you're increasing the net revenue of a farmer. You're bolstering agriculture at all levels. I don't see how and where and why any community leader will be against empowering and bolstering the efforts and the business of an agricultural farmer, right? And it's a matter of education. If something is really does bothers you about the solar panel, then let's talk about the array, right? We don't think that laying solar panels on the ground completely flat is a good practice. I don't think that's ethical. I come from a place, very small island, 100 miles times 35. That island is called Puerto Rico. And land is a very scarce resource. So I've seen some practices around the world where I think we can emulate those and encourage some of that education, which this is why we are here in the Virginia Solar Summit, learning a little bit more about the agrivoltaic, its effects, architecture, racking available, right? You can drive your John Deere underneath, you can drive a fire engine underneath, and still you're yielding a significant amount of energy savings, increasing your revenue, and protecting your crops from direct sunlight for those that are sensitive. It's a big concern about people. What happens if it leaks? Well, a solar panel breaks, right? Ours are hail resistant, hurricane resistant, snow low, Cat 5 resistant as well. But if a solar panel breaks, you know what we do? We replace it. And on top of that, we don't replace it and it goes to a landfill. We take it to our facility and then we recycle it. So we foster a circular economy where we're advancing the administration's efforts of reshoring American manufacturing production. How and why?
That's a great message, and just want to hope that county leaders and folks in decision-making capacities hears loud and clear. 22% of energy captured by the sun is actually very high. A gas combustion engine is able to utilize about 40% of the energy we put into it. Folks sometimes think that 22% is horrible. It's really leading edge.
Here's what's very interesting about solar energy that maybe those county leaders don't look at it that way. We're talking about 22%. In this case, we're producing at 23, 24%, some of our modules. But this is 22% or 23% at 30 years, okay? Yep. There is a period of degradation, but we're talking about minimal decimals of degradation over a period of 30 years. Now, that's a big contrast from an oil refinery. How much resources does it take to run an oil refinery to be yielding the same amount of power for 30 years? What about a coal mining plant? How long can we be mining coal for 30 years in one area? What are the tectonic plate shift effects if we continue to frack in one specific area? There's going to be some environmental implications that are, whether we like it or not, are facts. And one of the things that solar does is that this is a completely zero waste form of energy.
Sure.
Where nothing is lost.
Free.
Fuel is free. And look, one of the things that people ask us is like, what do you think about nuclear energy? I'm sure that was going to be one of your questions. There's a big talks about nuclear energy. Well, Solarix, we pride ourselves for being the #1 supporter of nuclear energy. And you probably know the reason why. The largest and most powerful nuclear reactor in the world is right above us, and it's the sun. And that sun is providing immense amounts of free energy for us. So if we are providing as Virginians, as Americans, the ability to harness that energy, to give it back to the community, because energy I think is undeniable human right that everybody should have access to. And we're doing it from the sun, just like plants do from their chloroplast. I think we're doing something really good for the next the next generations to come.
Excellent. Well, Carlos, welcome to Virginia. We're
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Such
the
an honor.
investment, and we're excited to follow you guys in the coming months.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, personally, I'm so excited to see Solarix take off in Bedford County. Just having not only a domestic solar manufacturer, but one just down the road here in Virginia is going to be absolutely huge. I mean, a growing proportion of the solar panels that we utilize here in America are made in America, and they're going to double down on that and make sure that some of our Virginia solar farms will be made with Virginia solar panels. So that's just phenomenal. They're going to be hosting many dozens, if not 100 jobs in Bedford County that will, allow for full-time careers for folks in the manufacturing sector, one that we desperately want to see revitalized here in this country, just making sure that our next generation of energy tech is as strong and as robust and as American-made as possible. And up next, we're going to wrap up the Solar Summit interviews with a conversation with a gentleman who might be responsible for training and advocating for the folks that will install those Solarix panels here in Virginia, Mr. Charles Skelly with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 666. We're very proud of his work done at the local level, making sure that folks know that every single energy investment comes with jobs, and those jobs have to come from somewhere. He's doing his very best to make sure those jobs come from folks from within his organization.
Hey, everybody, this is Ben Wilson of the America First Energy Podcast here at the Virginia Solar Summit with Mr. Charles Skelly of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Local Union 666. Mr. Skelly, please give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself, but also about the work that you do with IBEW.
Sure. Charles Skelly, IBEW Local 666. We're labor union representing electricians in Central Virginia, around 1,700 members. I'm the chief elected official for the local, responsible for negotiating contracts, training next generation of craft workers, et cetera.
So obviously, IBEW, both at the local level, regional level, and even, of course, at the national level, is a significant voice in workforce development, particularly in new and, old industries. Obviously, in Virginia, clean energy, renewable energy is a growing industry. So how do you see the role of IBEW in that workforce development space, particularly for clean and renewable energy?
The IBEW was created around the idea of workforce development, making sure when the IBEW was founded in the 1890s, 50% of electricians died before they made it to the end of their career. So more than pay and benefits, we were out there to make sure that folks got the training they need to get home safe every day. We're spending a lot of time training in every industry, making sure that folks have careers, not just jobs. They're not just trained in EV installation or just in solar. They're trained in everything so they can be wiring a building one day and the next day putting a solar farm in.
Right. And I think that's an interesting point you make. We're not really just working for jobs. We're working for careers, which, implies not just for them, but for their children opportunities. Right. So talk to us a little bit about how you see long-term investment through the IBEW in all sectors that you work in. How does that work with IBEW? Your training programs, how do you work with leaders to continue on, not just for themselves, but to share that with their communities or their families?
So our training programs are actually, we negotiate an hourly rate that our contractors pay into the training fund.
Wow.
It's a jointly managed trust. Labor and management has equal seats at the table and decides what the industry needs next, and make sure that we're getting all the latest and greatest training in whatever the next technology is.
Right. And that's, I guess, how you build that long, continual, growth of electrical workers is by having that routine training that is got investment from all sides. Right.
Absolutely.
So tell us, just to wrap up here, what are some of the opportunities that you see, particularly in your, for your local union 666 as it relates to renewable energy?
Renewable energy is seeing significant growth in Virginia with the Clean Economy Act, with the 5 or 6% year over year the Dominion's forecasting for Central Virginia, needs. So there's power to be built. There's data centers that are driving that power need, and we're training folks to be prepared to do all of it.
Right.
And very excited about it.
Yeah, most definitely. So tell our audience, they may not have interacted with the IBEW before. Tell us a little bit about how the best way to get in contact, whether it be with 666 locally or with their local IBEW.
IBEW.org is the International's webpage. Ours is IBEWLocal666.com. That's the best place to get a first interaction with us and figure out what's the next step.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate your time today.
Absolutely.
And look forward to seeing more of IBEW's work in Virginia.
Same here. Thank
Awesome.
you for your time.
Yeah. Skyler, great to hear that conversation with Charles Skelly of the IBEW. It's really awesome and inspiring to hear about the great work that they're doing to train the future and current workers in the electrical field. One of the things that I take away from his conversation is really that idea that the IBEW and jobs in these emerging technologies like solar, renewable energy aren't just jobs for now, but they're careers. And training the new and next workforce is essential for us to move forward as a country as we bring in manufacturing like Solarix and continue to expand new technology here in the country. We've got to have people to build it out and support that. So really excited to hear about the work of the IBEW as they continue to advocate for workers, electrical workers, for these projects. But of course, like we always do, we'll move on now that we are done with our conversations from the Solar Summit to our In the News section. So stay with us as we talk about the latest news from across the nation. Alrighty, well, welcome back to the America First Energy Podcast, where we have just wrapped up a great conversation with a couple of different stakeholders from the Virginia Solar Summit, which was a very exciting experience to learn a little bit more about what's going on here in Virginia with regards to solar. But Skyler, now I want to transition a little bit to a national news story and begin to talk about maybe the implications here in Virginia, but also the implications for utility scale solar, commercial solar broadly across the nation. So recently, an article in Canary Media by Matt Simon came out really highlighting the economic impact from utility scale solar on farmers. It's got a funny title talking about farmers making bank, but really highlighting the idea that utilizing maybe underproductive or land that just doesn't have a high yield for whatever reason has been a great way for farmers to diversify their income, where this has been a huge problem in the Central Valley in California. So tell me a little bit about, you've read this article. Tell me a little bit about what your initial thoughts are and how you interpret and hear this story about farmers and their economics.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ben. It's an important topic, and I've actually been to the Central Valley to talk with farmers and folks in the energy space about their challenges. California is different than Virginia in a lot of ways. We have a lot of water, sometimes too much rain. They don't get very much, but it's a very fertile landscape. The Central Valley represents about 1% of arable land in the country, but produces up to a third of our food from that one central slip in California. Their water is so scarce in some years that they have to tell farmers that you're not allowed to farm certain pieces of property as a way to conserve some of that water. So those farmers are looking for new opportunities. That's less water intensive ways to earn an income from their property, and solar is one way that folks are obviously looking to do that. Solar requires very little, if no water in California, and is allowing those farmers to generate income on land that would otherwise just lay fallow for a season or two. So it's an all-around solid win. I mean, we'll be the first to admit that farmers have tough choices to make almost every single year, every growing season, on what they're going to grow, how much of it they're going to grow, and what those returns might look like. Any time that a farmer can diversify his or her income with some sustainable long use lease income from an energy facility like a solar farm is very positive. And there's plenty more broad-based effects that solar helps to bring to that farmer and that land in the long term.
Yeah, and I think, as you'll recall, and our audience will know based on listening to those interviews that we had earlier here in the episode, agrivoltaics or ecovoltaics, really finding that balance was a key point of this year's conference, but seems to be kind of more central to the solar conversation across the nation. And one of the important things to come out of this article, I think, is really highlighting the fact that despite what we may hear on the road or in the field or in the news sometimes, this really isn't an either or kind of situation. Solar is not the path for solar forward is not at the expense of agriculture, and we don't have to look at it that way. We've got to find those ways to benefit our landowners, allow them to supplement their income, and really be able to supplement the rest of their agricultural production elsewhere, especially in areas like the Central Valley where there are other extenuating circumstances that limit a farmer's yield or ability to manage their farm. It's very important, both in California and here in Virginia.
That's right. I mean, folks don't realize that if a farmer goes bankrupt, that land is usually sold incrementally as a way to save the rest of the farm, or it's just sold off at the end of a farmer's life to development. And we're always looking for ways to have smart development and preserve agricultural land and open spaces. There's immeasurable value to those things, but solar on even a fifth or a tenth of a piece of property can help with those recurring annual incomes to allow the rest of the agricultural operation to stay intact. You mentioned agrivoltaics. I'm not sure if that's a big focus out in California. I certainly know bees and pollinators are especially important out there. But that's another way to keep active land or agricultural land in active agriculture while also having a solar array installed. That's dual use, and it helps the soil health of that agricultural acreage over the long term. The droppings from sheep, from the grazers fertilize that land over the long term. So at the end of a project's 25, 30, 35 year life, that land is in a much better space than how it was at the beginning of that solar lease, when it might have been in agriculture, being fertilized, being sprayed with herbicides on a regular basis, and routinely tilled. This is just a way to help that land heal a little bit, let it breathe, let it rest, and then go back into agriculture if and when we need it in the future.
Right. And it's that balance that we want to strike. And those are the stories that we're hearing in Virginia from some of our local partners that are landowners here in the Commonwealth. So I know recently our team has been in the field engaging with a couple of different farmers, both in the valley as well as in other parts of the Commonwealth. So tell me a little bit about those experiences you've had recently, and what are the things that you're hearing from some of the landowners here specifically in the Commonwealth?
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but in a couple of weeks, we'll have a new episode released from an interview with a solar grazer who actually grew up in this same community that he's now grazing under panel, and also talked with the landowner whose sheep had historically been on this same piece of property, about 20-something acres, just in regular agriculture production. He invited a solar lease onto his property. About 20% of his 100-acre farm is now in solar, and the landowner couldn't have been happier. They've been farming that land for about 25 years, and as they were approaching retirement, they were going to sell off the farm for development and maybe downsize and move to a smaller acreage somewhere else in their county. And this solar income, allowed them to retire a bit more comfortably, slow down the ag operations, allow their children to take hold of that ag operation as best they could, but allow them to stay on that land. And instead of it being a 100-home subdivision, it's still that 100-acre farm. 20 acres is being utilized for solar, and the land is very much in agriculture. So, that was just one small example. A lot of folks don't understand that this is very often farmers coming forward and asking for a diversified income, asking for a solar facility to be installed there. And it's not like the energy company comes and says they have to do it. This is a willing choice, a free market choice that these landowners are making to enter into these long-term 20-year lease with the opportunity to renew a couple of times, to keep that income local to the family. And our interview earlier with Jess Gray, underscored that. It's keeping that income as local as possible, allowing folks to reinvest in their home property and in the wider community.
Yeah, and I think, an important aspect about that partnership between the landowner and a company is often overlooked. We get bogged down in conversations between county and local, or the locality and a company, but it's really important that we elevate that landowner perspective, because more times than not, they've been on that land for generations, years and decades, and centuries, being close to and with that land, and they have a really good idea and understanding of the best way to move that land forward. And so making sure that we can include those perspectives is essential as we continue to see how can we build out energy here in the Commonwealth, but also in the nation, and balance those things that are so important that are highlighted in that article. So very good to see that article come out of or out of California, as we continue obviously on Energy Rights team to really talk about that landowner perspective, hopefully elevating the landowner's rights to discuss this type of project and see responsible energy development move forward here in the Commonwealth.
Thank you for joining us for the America First Energy podcast, brought to you by Energy Right. You can find our show on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. You can find full videos to accompany our episodes on the Energy Right YouTube page. Today's episode was hosted by me, Skyler Zunk, and my colleague Ben Wilson, produced by Kayla Ventura with audio and visual support from Dylan Taylor. A big thank you to all of our guests this episode, Dan French and the entire staff of the Virginia Solar Summit, as well as Jess Gray, Carlos Glass, and Charles Skelly for your generous time during the summit. Join us next time for the America First Energy Podcast.